So first big thing to get out of the way in terms of what is coming due, right? So the draft of paper 1 is due tonight. And then that's the last thing you have to do for this class before the break. And then over the break, you'll finish paper 1, right? So I should get I'm gonna be gone over the weekend, but I'll be able to get feedback to you probably Monday or Tuesday. So then paper 1 is due on the Tuesday when we come back. I also want you to read the historical background chapter in Rousseau, Burke Revolution, and Revolution in France, 1791. So that's, this the Reacting to the Past book. It looks like more than it is. It's pretty large print. And I also am going to want you to complete a history quiz that I'm going to put online. It'll open up on Tuesday, and as long as you complete, we'll go over it in class when you come back. But yeah, as long as you complete it at some point over the week, it's fine. It's open book and not timed, right? The whole idea is that when we start the bigger French Revolution projects, y'all have a good sense of the historical context, right? Yeah. So just finish the quiz at some point before our next class meeting, right? I'll send you an email when it's opened up. And yeah. Okay. So any other questions about anything? Okay, so I've given you all 2 handouts here, right? So the first is a starter bibliography on the French Revolution. So this is meant to serve 2 purposes. It's meant to give you a set of sources you can consult to try to back up your arguments when we get into the project, right? So once I give you, your character and faction sheets, right? You look up the kinds of things that are important to that faction, and you'll try to advocate for those when you're putting together the Constitution, right? If you check some of these sources out, this will help you make better and more historically appropriate arguments, right? And I'll show you how to get some of these in a minute. The other thing this can help with is to give you a starting point for that final research paper, right? I never want to hear anybody come to me with I couldn't find any sources complaint, right? Because, what have I just given you right here?
The source.
Exactly. I've given you a list of sources you can use, right? And you don't have to limit yourself to these sources, and we'll look at how you can find others. You've got a good starter set here.
Is there a digital copy of this too? Of these on?
This is on Georgia View.
Okay.
The bibliography's not, but I can put it on Georgia View.
Okay.
In case you happen to lose this. And I don't know what's going on with the hole punch. I guess somebody just loaded the wrong thing into the copier today. Okay, so any questions about the bibliography? Okay, then let's talk through the expectations for paper 2 a little bit here, right? So the first thing that I want to stress is that this is not due for a long time, right? So you don't have to start freaking out about this yet. The first element of this is an annotated bibliography, which isn't due until May 2nd. However, because this is a research project, it's going to take longer to do. And so I want to try to encourage you to start earlier. So what you're going to give me is a researched argument, 2,500 to 3,000 words long. So it's going to be like about 7 to 9 pages double-spaced, plus the bibliography. And you're going to do this in 3 stages, right? The first thing you're going to give me is an annotated bibliography, then you're going to give me a draft, and then you're going to give me a final paper. And that's going to be the final project for this class, right? There's no exam, because this is a composition class, and exams don't make any sense in a comp class.
So this is our final exam.
This is basically your final. Yeah. So what we'll do in the final exam period, instead of having a test is we'll do a peer review of your draft. So there are 3 options you can take, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail in a minute. But the basic purpose, right, is for you to compose and defend an original argument. I want you to show me that you're familiar with commonly used library resources and with research conventions in the humanities. I want you to be able to compare and contrast secondary sources in building your own interpretation of a text or an event. And it's also, a big part of this is also just learning the basic conventions of scholarly writing, right? So, in terms of the base level requirements here, right? 2,500 to 3,000 words long. Bibliography does not count towards this total. Word count non-negotiable, right? Must be at least 2,500. Should not be longer than 3,000.
Okay.
If you find you're going over 3,000, you're probably trying to cover a topic that's too big. You must reference no fewer than 3 secondary sources and no more than 5. We'll talk in a minute about what kinds of sources are appropriate. Right? As per usual, Times New Roman font, 12-point double spaced, right? This is the basic academic standard unless your instructors tell you otherwise. Even though I know it's not the default in MS Word anymore. Citations, as for the paper you're doing right now, MLA format with parenthetical in-text citations and works cited page. Okay, so any questions about basic requirements? Okay. So have either of you done an annotated bibliography before? Do you know what this is?
I know what a bibliography is, but I've never annotated one.
Okay. So a bibliography is like what I gave you there. It's just a list of sources alphabetized in a particular format. So an annotated bibliography is that plus short paragraphs describing each of the sources, right? So what you're giving me with an annotated bibliography basically is proof that you have read and evaluated each of the sources, and that you've thought about how you're going to use this in your paper. So, yeah, go ahead.
So it's proof that we have read the bibliography. So that's basically what we're doing with it.
It's proof that you've read the source.
Okay, the source
that you're citing there, right?
So that doesn't account for too much to come back to it.
No, this is well. For one thing, this is actually a separate assignment, right? You're gonna do this before you write the draft. And the reason I want you to do this before you write the draft is I want you to do the research first, because I know that we have a tendency to come up with an idea first, right? And then look for evidence that supports that idea. Generally, that's actually kind of the wrong way to go about writing a paper. What you should be doing is looking at your evidence first, looking at your data first, finding a pattern, and then coming up with a thesis that you think explains it, right? So what I'm trying to do here is ensure as best I can that you proceed inductively rather than deductively, if you remember the difference between those two. Okay. Other questions so far? Okay, great. So you're going to find your three to five sources, and I forgot to correct that in the annotated bibliography instructions. I'm sorry. So yeah, at least 3, but no more than 5 sources. You're going to put each of them into an MLA-style bibliography that includes a short, roughly 5-sentence paragraph describing each source. I will give you a sample, so you know what one of these should look like. I'll put it on Georgia View, probably this week. And I want you to follow the directions listed here, right? So first, use only scholarly peer-reviewed sources, right? This means articles from peer-reviewed journals and books published by scholarly presses. Does everybody know what peer-reviewed means in an academic context or a scholarly context like this? Is everybody familiar with the concept? will take your silence to mean no. Okay, so the way academic publishing typically works, right? If I want to submit an article to a journal, I send it to the editor with my name taken off of it. And, anything that indicates, my university affiliation or, who I might be. The editor is then going to send it out, usually to 2 or 3 people in my field, to review it and recommend it either for, immediate publication with revisions, or rejection. So this is kind of how academic journals do quality control, right? They make sure that a paper has been reviewed by multiple experts in the field before they agree to publish anything. It's not completely foolproof. Sometimes stuff slips through, right? But generally speaking, if you're taking stuff that's in a peer-reviewed academic journal or published by an academic press, it's been reviewed by somebody who has confirmed that this is not wackadoodle bullshit, right? Which is why I want you using these kinds of sources. Don't use newspapers, don't use magazines, don't use religious texts, books published by commercial presses, or internet sources, with the exception of journal articles you find through Galileo, right? And let me just explain quickly why I don't want you using things that you find through Google searches, right? Now, Google's algorithm is basically a black box, right? Nobody knows exactly how it works, but what sorts of results does it tend to prioritize? Does Google's algorithm read for scholarly rigor or for accuracy?
It's not really accurate.
What's that?
Google's not really accurate.
Yeah, or at least the hits that it comes up with, right, aren't necessarily, like, they're not evaluated by a person who is confirming that, yeah, this is good information, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's something to do with the popularity of a particular site, right? And one thing I think we can all agree on, right, is the fact that an idea is popular does not necessarily mean that it is correct, right?
Right.
If 95% of Americans believe that Barack Obama was a cactus, would that make Barack Obama a cactus?
No.
No, he is clearly not a cactus, right? He is a human being. So just kind of keep that in mind here, right? That search engines aren't, they're automated. It's not a person that's actually going through and reviewing. This is why I don't want you just doing Google searches. I also want you to learn how to use the library, which is another reason I don't want you doing Google searches. Okay, so in your annotation for each source, you're going to describe the argument the source is making. You're going to look up the author, tell me what their credentials are, right? Make sure this person is on the level, is actually qualified to speak about what they're talking about. And you're going to tell me the way you intend to use the source, and you're going to do all this in about 5 sentences, right? So any questions about the annotated bibliography? Does all this seem fairly clear? Fantastic. Okay. So then the draft is going to be due on May 8th. It's got to be at least 75% of the total required length of the paper. So I'm going to need at least 1,875 words for this, right, for the draft, for you to get full credit.
How many words? Sorry.
1,875. Which is 75%.
Sorry.
75% of 2,500.
So sorry.
That's okay. So in terms of the directions here, they're not too much different from what I'm asking you to do on this paper, right? One, you got to take a position on something, right? Don't be wishy-washy or try to hedge or have it both ways, right? Take a firm position. Remember that there are more than 2 possible positions on any given issue, right? And quote your sources directly in order to analyze them. That is something I can't stress enough, right? That I want to see direct, like, I don't want to see you just plugging in sources as evidence, right? I want you to try to interrogate them and analyze them as well. The Final paper is going to be due on the 12th of May, after peer review, right? And yeah, the directions for this are pretty similar to the directions for paper one, as is the grading rubric. So I'll let you go over this on your own, right? The other thing I'll let you go over on your own and over the break, and ask me any questions if they come up, are the three options I've given you here for the paper, right? So you can do one of three things. You can either do a kind of textual literary analysis of a single important text related to the Revolution. You can do a historical analysis of some feature of or event in the Revolution. Or you can do a political science analysis of a particular faction in the Revolution. And the instructions and guidelines for doing each of these are listed here. So I'll give you all a minute to look this over and then come back to me if you have any questions. Yes, Michaela.
So for the react to the past game,
Uh-huh.
are we gonna do that or?
Yeah, we're gonna do something, well, we're gonna do something like it. We don't really have enough people in the class to do it in full, right? But we are gonna try to simulate putting together a constitution, and you will all be assigned characters and factions. So what you're going to try to do, like kind of like maybe without the various mechanisms in the games, is you're still going to, every week produce a short newspaper, and you're going to try to argue for your faction's position as you're trying to put together this constitution, right? Yes.
For the option 2, the
Yeah.
historical analysis, It says in order to complete the assignment, you will need to focus on a single participant or fraction within the revolution. When you mean faction, does that mean like one group or just one like particular party, or what do you mean by faction?
Yeah,
Okay.
so think of factions as being kind of like political parties,
Okay.
right? So on the one you've got, the conservatives are, the royalists on the one side who want to preserve the powers of the nobility and the church, right? Then on the other side you have the Jacobins who want to kind of level society and make everybody equal. And then you have a group called the Feuillants in the middle, who are trying to negotiate between these other two more extreme factions, right?
So basically just different parties of like different political parties.
Yeah, exactly. You've got at least three different political parties with different goals and different underlying political philosophies, right?
Thank you.
Yep. All right, anything else? Okay, so if other questions arise, you know how to get a hold of me. But I think I would like to move on and just talk a little bit about how to get stuff you need to complete this assignment, and to help kind of beef up your research for the newspaper articles you're going to be writing and for debates you'll be having in class after the break. So does everybody know how to get to the library website? We have not made this obvious on the new website.
I think I do.
I remember them explaining it, but I don't really.
Okay. So when you get to so unfortunately our new website is designed more for advertising to people who don't go here yet than it is for the use of people who are already here. So some things that we need to use are sometimes a little bit buried. If I sound slightly annoyed by this, it's because I am. So what you want to do is roll over the tab at the top here that says Academics, and then under Academic Resources, right in the drop-down menu, click on Library. And here we are, hey, the library. So there are a couple of things here that I want to show you. The first, because it's going to be like most of what's on the bibliography here are books, and you'll need to figure out how to find books, is GillFind. So GillFind is our connection to the actual physical volumes that are in our library and also all of the libraries in the USG system. So we are a small university, and we don't have a lot in terms of resources for a lot of things, as you're probably aware. So this means that our library, Lord bless them, they try. They don't have a lot of the things you're going to need. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you're doing a GillFind search is click on this little arrow up here and switch to searching the whole university system of Georgia. Right? This will allow you to request things from other institutions in the Georgia system. Usually it'll take about maybe 2 or 3 days for things to get here, depending on how things that you request from closer are going to get here faster. Like if you request something from Albany State or from Columbus State, that's usually going to get here faster than like if you request something from UGA in Athens or from Augusta or something like that. And let's just look at the list of things we've got here and see. We'll just take the first thing on the list, right? So we've got this book by Seamus Dean, The French Revolution and Enlightenment in England. So we'll put some of the key terms in here, right? Seamus Dean, French Revolution, and we'll see what we get. And we wait. And here we go. Hey, what do you know? First thing. So lucky for us, this is actually available in our library. So you could go right after this class, you could go and check that book out. So what you'd want to do is copy down this call number here, right? This PR129.F8B4. That'll tell you exactly where it is in the stacks. Have any of you had to use the library stacks before, like to search for a book? Okay. So you'll see as when you go upstairs, right, that all of these big bookcases have these letter number combinations on the side. Just look for the one that seems to correspond to what you're looking for, and it'll be on that set of shelves. So this is apparently an easy one to get, right? So let's see what we might have to do to get another one. And I didn't test this out first, so this might also be in our library. Let's try one of these other books, the E.J. Hobsbawm, Age of Revolution. Okay. And this, it appears we do not have in our library. So we can click on this here, and it takes us to a link that tells us where we can get it from, right? What's that?
Oh, well, sorry, I was saying that was far.
Yeah. Thankfully, you don't actually have to go there.
Yeah.
Right? So you can sign in with your GSW ID. Apparently that does that for me automatically, so that's nice. It may do the same for you, may not, but yeah, just whatever you use to log into CanesNet is what you would use to log into this. And then if I actually wanted this, then I would pick one of these three institutions, right? Click on this. They have a copy available. I would click request, and then I would have a 28-day loan, right? You can renew it at the end of the 28 days if you still need it. But yeah, so I would click on this, and I'd probably get it in about 3 days. So this is another one of the reasons why I want you all starting on this early, is because it might take a little time for some of these books to arrive, right? Okay. The other thing that you might notice on Gilfind is you'll see on the side here, there are other titles listed, right? So this is a way that you can find other related sources, right? So if we click on more here, it's going to give us a bigger list. So let's see, okay, Citizens by Simon Schama, that's already on our list here. Let's see if there's another something here that, so say, what you're interested in is the role of ordinary people in the French Revolution. So here's one called The Crowd in the French Revolution by George Rood. You could click on this, right? It'll take you there. You could evaluate this, see if this is something that looks like it would suit your purposes, and make the request and request that as well. Yeah, Ariel.
How would we know what book to look for? Like, are you gonna tell us what book, or do we actually have to go and find the books ourselves?
You will have to kind of make those determinations yourself. So here,
Okay.
so what I've done here is I've kind of split up the I've split up this bibliography into a couple of different categories. So these histories of the Revolution, all of these, like any one of these, would give you a good general overview of what happened in the French Revolution, right? I will say that the Seamus Dean book and the E.J. Hobsbawm book are a little bit more lefty politically in their orientation, so they're more sympathetic to the revolution, and also to the more radical parties in the revolution. Most of the others are a little bit more kind of neutral. So if you're assigned, say the Jacobins as your faction, then you might want to start with the Dean or especially the Hobsbawm book. The Hobsbawm is probably the most sympathetic to that group. If you're assigned one of the other factions, then you might want to start with Simon Schama or with William Doyle.
And also, if we were to find, like theoretically, if we were to find another book,
Mm-hmm.
would we have to ask you for permission first, or?
Not if it's
Not if it's
not if it's something you
fine.
got through the library. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, once you have at least one source, does anybody know how you can use that source to find other sources?
I don't know.
If you look at the end of most scholarly books or articles, what do you usually find?
Oh, okay. Oh. I was gonna say that, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I mean, you can use your source's bibliography, right, to find other related sources. And if you look at a couple of sources and you see that, maybe like they're all citing the same article or the same book, what should that tell you?
That they probably cited something like, oh wait, what's the question again?
Okay, so if you say you're looking at three or four different sources, right,
Okay.
and they all seem to be citing the same source.
Oh, okay. They probably got it from one another, or they probably got it from the same source, right?
Yeah, if they're all citing the same source, what does that tell you about that source that they're citing? What's that?
It could be yep.
Yeah, that's probably pretty important, right? That this is one that everybody relies on. So it's probably one that you should try to seek out, right?
And one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So for this assignment, right?
Uh-huh.
When will we know what we got assigned, or you said we're getting assigned a fact?
Yeah, we'll do that after the break.
Oh,
So
okay.
when we come back on Tuesday, I'll give you
Okay.
a faction assignment. Okay, but yeah, does anybody have any other questions about how to use the book search function here? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, once you get it, you said you get it like alone. So
Uh-huh.
we have to send it, like give it back, right? We just take it back to the library.
Yeah, you just take it back to our library and they'll send it back for you.
Oh, they do the work.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
You will never have to travel to Kennesaw State to return a book, right?
I would hope not.
Yeah, they'll ship it here. You'll get an email that lets you know it's there, and then when you're done with it, you just take it back to our library,
Okay.
and it's all done through them. Now, if what you need is an article, and articles are often going to be, on the one hand, right, more current because they tend to get published faster. Right? The turnaround time is faster than it is for a book, and they're also a lot shorter, so easier to digest in a short amount of time. Right? So you'll find scholarly articles on Galileo. Now, there are a couple of databases that you can check here. And which database you check kind of depends on what sort of information you're looking for and what sort of project you're doing. So for just about any kind of project in any humanities field, JSTOR is your go-to database. Right, JSTOR includes history papers, English papers, anthropology papers, philosophy papers, right? So papers in just about every humanities discipline. So say like, you want to do a paper on, the role of women in Rousseau's idea of the social contract, right? So you go to JSTOR, click on advanced search, and you put in your keywords up here, right? So you want Rousseau and social contract and women. And you might also want to narrow your results in a couple of different ways, right? So you don't end up getting hundreds. So I've decided I only want articles. And I only want articles that are in English. And I don't want anything that is published before 1960. You can also filter based on the academic discipline, but we won't worry about that for now. So let's see what we get here. Okay, we still get 1,245 results. So what that means is that we probably want to make our search terms more specific, right? Rousseau and social contract and women might still be too broad. So what we want to do is narrow that down to a more specific idea. But yeah, here's, we still find some interesting possibilities here. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, sexist. Rousseau, anti-feminism and women's nature. And what you would do when you find an article that looks like it might be something that works for you, right? You click on it. It'll take you to a PDF you can review. And if you decide, based on the PDF, that this is something that you want, you can download it either onto a thumb drive or directly to your desktop, right? And you always want to do this, right? You always want to download it to something of your own so you don't have to keep going back and looking for the article. Now, let's say you are looking for an article or a book that you can't find in our library or in JSTOR. That doesn't mean you can't get it. We subscribe to an interlibrary loan program called TAPASA. And let me just briefly show you how this works. So TAPASA, if you've never used before, you do have to create an account. So it'll just ask you a couple of questions the first time you log in. You answer the questions, and everything will be cool, right? And then once you are able to do that, you can, so the opening screen is always just going to kind of give you what your last few requests were and what their status is, right? Whether they were completed. So like I requested this book, and by now, yeah, it's come and gone, right? I've used it and I've sent it back. So you create a request, and you tell them what it is you want, right? So let's say I want a book. Let's say I can't find this book by Ambrogio Caiani anywhere in our library systems. So I click on book. I give them the information they want. So this is Louis XVI and the French Revolution, 1789 to 1792. The author is Ambrogio Caiani, which is just ridiculously fun to say. Publisher, Cambridge University Press. Place of publication, Cambridge. Dates, 2012. Oh, you may have noticed too, I'd forgotten I'd done this, but if you look in these political analyses, I've put in parentheses the name of the faction to whom the source would be most useful. ISBN we don't need. So anything that has little asterisks here you have to give them. So where did you learn about this item? I don't really understand why they need to know this. So I usually just put in something that amuses myself. So I don't know, like something like, I learned it from Demonic Whispers in the Heart of the Abyss, right? Usually something that would make whoever's on the receiving end of this think I'm insane. Title of chapter, not relevant. And so if you want a book, generally what you want is the loan, right? You want them to actually send the book to you. However, if what you want is just a single chapter of a book, make sure you switch this to copy, and then they'll send you a copy of the chapter you wanted, not of the whole book, right? You do need to give them the date by which you need this. So let's say I want this by the 31st of March. and then you give them your university ID. If I actually wanted this, I would click Submit Request, and the request would go through, right? So when you request an article or a book chapter, it's only going to give you like 5 views of it, right? So we can see here that all of the links of these that I had are now expired, so I can't really show you a good example. But what you want to do is the same thing you do with JSTOR, right? You click on it the first time, the link will be right here. You'll click on it once, you download it to something you own, and then you don't have to keep going back to this page, right? Otherwise, like if it's a book that you've asked for, again, it'll probably show up in about, as long as it's not something that's too weird or esoteric, it'll show up in probably about a week. So if you're using Tapasa, always give yourself a little bit more time because it's a little bit slower. Okay, so does anybody have any questions about any of this? Everybody feels confident that they can do this. Okay, if you do not feel confident that you can find these sources using these methods, you can always ask me, right? The other thing you can do that will probably save you a lot of time when you start your paper, make an appointment with the reference librarian. Right? We have a full-time reference librarian on staff. His name is John Wilson. You can reach him at johnwilson@gsw.edu. And when you make your appointment with him, bring the assignment sheet with you, tell him what it is you're looking for, what you're trying to do, and he will help you. Like, you can probably learn more from him in 15 minutes than you just did in half an hour with me, right? So yeah, he really is a tremendous help if you're doing a research paper in any field, right? He knows all of these databases inside out because it's his job to do that. Okay, so do y'all have any questions?